go. There we go. So, right. Okay. So this is our how to market your venue presentation. So firstly, I mean, you met us all at the venue managers meeting last week. So yeah, but I just thought I'd let people know who we are. So it's Maddie, Sarah, and me, Rhiannon, and we're all the artist services team. So yeah, we basically put it here. We look after sort of all of the artists and the venues journey with Brighton Fringe. So all of the admin, we run these workshops, we offer support with the registration, and all the boring stuff like insurance and stuff. But we can also help venues and artists with their marketing. So a few things, I mean, I feel like you're going to know a lot of these things considering your role, but a few things we're going to go over is just what is marketing. A big thing with Fringe is always identifying your objective, because a lot of people come with different objectives. A lot of venues have different objectives and have something different that they want to get out of it. So I think identifying what it is you want from taking part in Brighton Fringe is really important for your venue. Finding your audience, and then a few tips for sort of marketing on a budget, because obviously we understand for a lot of venues, you know, they pop up just for Fringe, all their marketing is ploughed into that month, or their marketing budget. But for a lot of people, that is not the case. So talk about doing a few things on a budget, tips for working with the press, which is obviously aimed at venues who haven't done that themselves before. Again, because we have a big variety of venues. So, you know, one of the local churches might not know what to do when talking to the press. And then just talking about setting a budget and a timetable, and then some questions if we've got any. Who knows? And then, so the first thing is, what is marketing? So obviously marketing is the action of promoting your venue and your shows that you're hosting and selling the tickets. It includes identifying your audience, setting targets, creating promotional materials, and evaluating your results. So we're going to go through most of those items now. So this is an example of some great Brighton Fringe marketing. It's for an event, but I think it really knows its audience. It knows its Fringe audience. And I think it's a really wonderful bit of marketing. Just a quick little silly video. The important thing is that it is very silly. So let me know. Hopefully, I hope you can hear this, because it's one of my favorites.
Wow. So the show is over, went really well. Let's see your thoughts. Come on. So right there, what's it?
So yeah, I love this video just because I think it was filmed at Brighton Fringe in 2021. It's a really good spin on like a good way to promote your venue and the events happening at your venue is sort of audience reactions to the show. Obviously, we see like gushing ones on, you know, you sometimes see it on the TV for like theatre ads and stuff like that. But I just thought it was really fitting with the show to be silly, basically.
It creates that curiosity as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder what it's about if people are this emotional about it.
Yeah, like it's like how revolting is this? This one, let me just see if it's going to play in. Ooh. So yeah, this one is for, it's not strictly a Fringe venue, but it's for the new Boulevard venue in London, which is run by Underbelly, who are obviously a huge Fringe promoter. So I just thought, you know, putting together something like this, where the venues already have this kind of footage, and, you know, just re-editing things. You see obviously great like hero shots. I was on the North Lane Brew House website today, and they had a great film on their website, which was, you know, some of it was shot during the children's parade, some of it was shot during Pride, you know, and it really gave an essence of what like Brighton's like. So I thought this video was pretty good for getting across the same kind of thing. So obviously they've got all their cocktails and their bar and everything, and then everyone goes upstairs for the shows. So obviously I really like the actual people walking up the stairs as well. There's quite a lot of those shots. Again, just a really short video, but just gives people an idea of what the venue is going to be like, and also what kind of shows they're going to have. So I thought that was really nice. Right. So the first thing with Brighton Fringe, I think I always stress this to artists a lot, is figuring out what your objective is. But I also think it's really important for venues. Like, venues get involved with Brighton Fringe for lots of different reasons. Some of them are going to want to sell loads of tickets, get loads of bums on seats, and make loads of money. Some of them are going to want to build a sort of reputation for hosting a certain type of event. So whether that's like cabaret or comedy or circus, sort of building up that reputation that will then support them year round in hosting those kinds of events. Venues might be getting involved because Brighton Fringe might help them access a new audience that they don't currently have. It might help you get press attention for, you know, getting that. You might be able to get press attention in a different way to how you've been getting it before. Obviously, you know, if you're a restaurant and someone comes in, and you're going to get press attention a lot about your food and things like that, but maybe this would lead you to getting more attention regarding sort of events you're hosting and things like that. Whether you just want to get involved to support the arts and Brighton Fringe, or I always like to mention this one to venues, we run a Audience Choice Award for best venue. So that is voted for by the public, and that is a feat in itself to try and get awarded that. So yeah, it depends on what you're wanting to focus on, but I always think you need to pick one, maybe two at a push objectives. And then I always suggest to people, you know, having SMART objectives, so specific, measured, achievable, realistic, and timetabled. Obviously, every venue that gets involved in Fringe wants to come in and make money, but I think we also need to be sort of realistic in our goals. So if, you know, your objective is about ticket sales and making money for the business, it can't just be like, I want to sell out every night and it's going to be the best thing ever. We need to be a bit more realistic about it. Fringe, you know, selling to 50% capacity at Fringe is a good result on average. So saying something like, I will sell to at least 50% capacity during the run of shows that we've got on, I think is a really sensible objective and a good way to sort of figure out what your target is to get out of it. Then thinking about your objective overall. I mean, I'm sure you've done this before for your business, but yeah, a SWOT analysis. So thinking about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats about getting involved in Brighton Fringe. So for an example, I've used one that, you know, a sort of draft one that we've done for Brighton Fringe before. So strengths are, we're one of England's largest arts festival. We were the largest last year. I've got a feeling we might not be this year because there's some other people coming up with a similar amount of events. We have a huge economic impact on the city. We're well connected, and we've got loads of charity and community partnerships. We're also a really economically accessible festival compared to other festivals that happen in the city. So our average ticket price last year was £9.38. So that's obviously good for the local community. Our opportunities are, we have new venues taking part this year. So we've got lots of new venues taking part this year, and we've got some new outdoor venues as well. So that's really exciting. Another opportunity is that during May, everybody comes to Brighton because it's when the Great Escape, Brighton Festival and Artists Open Houses and Brighton Fringe are all on. So that's another great opportunity for us. And we also work on a series of programmes with sort of collaborating with international artists and also local artists. So that's another opportunity for us. Our weaknesses would be a small team. There's only 3 of us that are full-time, the rest are part-time. And we also have an over-reliance on funding and sponsorship for the festival. And then threats that we have is, we have a lack of regular funding. The government doesn't fund the arts particularly well. And also the cost of living crisis. People might not be spending their money on tickets to go to shows at Brighton Fringe. So, oh, whoopsie, skipped the wrong way. So I think this is a really good thing to do to sort of evaluate where your venue might sit at Brighton Fringe. What is it that you have that you could offer to people, or whether that's artists or audiences, which other venues don't have. So like for the instance the other day, we were talking about, could you do a ticket which you include food in, that kind of thing, would really set you apart from a lot of other venues that take part in Brighton Fringe. And then thinking about the audience that you're going to find. So thinking about what life stage they're at. Are they in education? Do they have children? For example, are they students or maybe young professionals, or maybe they're, young parents? Their demographics. So have they had previous arts exposure? Have they had opportunities? What kind of event will they want to go to? If they haven't had previous arts exposure, they might want to go to something like cabaret or circus, which tends to be more easily accessible than theatre, for example. Yep. So it's really important to think about what your current audience is and what audience you're going to be attracting to what events you book. Thinking about people's attitudes, values, and behaviours, so their spirituality, the morality, and their interests. This comes in because I think this is really great considering contra collaborations. So things like, obviously we have a lot of venues that host LGBTQ events. So whether it's they might speak to someone at the Ledwood Centre, the LGBT Community Centre, and say, we'd love to offer some of your volunteers some free tickets. Could you include us in your next mailer going out to your audience? So trying to sort of align those values with other organisations that can help you make a success of the event. And then also your geographical location. A lot of people in Brighton like to go to events on their doorstep, is something that we've realised. So, the proximity, who's in your immediate area? Are there people in your building you can offer sort of a discount to? Or are you going to program events that are targeted at certain audiences? So, children's events, and you're going to target them at families in Hanover, or because your venue is situated in Hanover, you're going to do largely family events because that's what people will come to. And then also thinking about how you're going to get to your audience. So regarding marketing, obviously there's 2 ways of doing it. You can be broad, you can go for a mass audience, sort of high visibility, simple generic messaging. So for example, an advert in a newspaper, or outdoor advertising like a billboard, which is stuff that Brighton Fringe will do, or targeted. So we always push sort of more for venues and artists to work on targeted marketing. So thinking about how you're going to access those individuals with common interests, sponsored ads, targeted emails, and like the geographical location close where those audiences are. Pros and cons to both. The pros with broad is, there's a wider mass appeal. Your brand is more likely to be visible, and it can help you seem larger than you are. With targeted, you have a much higher rate of engagement, and it's easier to track. So I think regarding for venues and artists, it's important to think about targeted marketing, whereas Brighton Fringe will do the sort of sweeping general marketing, through our billboards and things like that. The cons with broad is it can cause vague messaging, so you can't effectively track it and report on it, and you might not get much feedback. Targeted might seem niche, or it might be may make people feel isolated. So that's something we were talking about. You said the owners of your restaurant weren't vegan, so you want to make sure it's inclusive. It's not just about sustainability and like those shared values. Finally, I always ask people to define their venue. So your vision. So who is it, what is it, where is it, when is it, and why? And that's sort of more to do with the the events that you're hosting. So what events are you hosting? You know, are they going to be at a suitable time for your audience? Obviously, you're not going to host a children's event at like 6 p.m. in the evening when it's aimed at 2-year-olds, because that's when they're eating their dinner and going to bed. Defining your target audience and making sure you know who you're trying to attract. And then your pricing, making sure that your pricing works on the pricing of the events at your venue works for your audience. So obviously, if you're hosting a comedy show and they want to charge 25 quid, but your venue, you know, the average price of a pint is £4, it's probably not going to go well, because you're going to be isolating people from that event. A little bit about what Brighton Fringe does for marketing. So we're not doing a brochure or an app at the moment, due to costs, but we are printing a family guide. So that's just going to list all of the children and young people event. And we're also going to print a short run of our listings booklet, which is like a reduced version of the brochure. But it's going to be a few thousand copies, and it's going to be targeted at people who feel like they are digitally excluded from the festival and they can't take part because they find the computers and the website too difficult to navigate. So people are going to be able to, that won't necessarily serve a marketing purpose, but it will aid certain people to book tickets and browse. But as we're only printing a short few thousand copies, it won't be in sort of every pub, bar and cafe like it has been in the past. Regarding our out-of-home advertising, we've organised a big billboard campaign around the city that will run for the 4 weeks of the festival. So that is happening. We've also secured new sites from the council to host advertising. We organise venue boards for venues. We organise bunting for venues. So the venue boards have a venue number and your accessibility information and a QR code to scan to get to the tickets for that venue. And we will drop them round to you for free, and we ask you to display them on the sort of outside of your venue so everyone knows you're taking part. We can also drop off bunting at the same time, and we also have lamppost boards around the city advertising certain shows, but obviously these are advertising that we run for events and shows can also all be bought by venues, so that's really a great opportunity for you to display listings and things like that. A lot of venues will do their entire listings on one poster and then have it plastered all around the city, so that's really good. We've also invested a large amount of money in sort of social media advertising this year in Google Ads, so we're really hoping to see that pay off as well. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was a bit about marketing on a budget as part of Brighton Fringe. So the basics are to make sure that you've added the events to your website with a link to the Brighton Fringe box office. You don't obviously have to build a box office system or anything like that. You can just redirect to the Brighton Fringe website, but just make sure it is obvious on your website and on your social media that you are taking part in Brighton Fringe. Social media, make sure you're creating Facebook events for or pestering your events that you're hosting to make sure they're creating those Facebook events that are happening at your venue. Co-host it with them, co-host it with us as well. You can invite us to co-host and we will approve that. And also just make sure that as soon as someone looks at your social media that they know that you're taking part in Brighton Fringe this year. You know, have a carousel on Instagram with the Brighton Fringe logo on it, highlighting all the events happening at your venue. This is a big one. When I went to Edinburgh last year in August, using your building. So in Edinburgh, there were so many fantastic displays on the building. You know, you don't have to go all out. You know, I saw one of them with a giant octopus hanging off the building, but so I'm not saying, you know, spend £10,000 on getting a giant octopus commissioned, but you can put up posters, you know, hang them outside your building, make sure there's information in the windows, and that basically if anyone looks at your venue, they know that you're taking part. Make sure that people are stopping and staring at your building. And then remembering that any of the events that you're hosting, if they're in-house or, you know, external bookings, that their success is your success. Obviously, a lot of venues operate on a higher fee charge. So they'll just rent out a room for a couple of £100 to the act, and then they're sort of quite hands off about it. But the more people that they attract to their event, even if you're not taking money from their ticket sales, that's going to be money coming in over the bar. So just remembering that you're collaborating with them, and that their success is your success. The more bums on seats they have, the more beer you're going to sell. So that's a really important thing. Word of mouth. Brighton is a very word of mouth city. Brightonians love to hear about what their friends have been going to see and whether it was worth it. That's how the shows in Brighton Fringe always do really well. But you can do a few things to sort of make sure you're generating that word of mouth as soon as possible. So making sure that the events you are booking are good quality and share your audience. So obviously, when people do come to you at those initial stages to apply to perform at your venue, just making sure that they, you've had a little look at their website. It looks relatively professional. You've seen a clip of their work and things like that, and you're happy to book them. Also, I always advise people to just have a quick scan of their social media as well, just to check out, images and what kind of stuff they've done to promote their shows in the past. And also just, making sure that you share an audience. There's no point booking a really super serious theatre production piece and then hosting it in, I don't know, a children's playground. I don't know what it is, but the example venue I always like to use is the Brighton Toy Museum. They pretty much exclusively book children's shows and events that would interest collectors. So they're making sure that their two audiences that they have, which are older people who are interested in collectible items and families, are catered for when they do their Brighton Fringe programming. So I always think they're a great example. Always create some like listing posters and social media content, listing all of your events that you have on, because these are easy to churn out and show that you're actually putting on a few shows on throughout the month. I always say don't let events cancel because of low numbers. Obviously, if they are distraught that they've only sold 3 tickets and they don't want to go on sale, I'm not going to say that you should force them on stage. But even if people perform to 3 people, the next night, if they deliver a really, really good show, the next night there's going to be 6, or the next week there's going to be 6, and the numbers will grow. There's been some great stories in Edinburgh before where someone's performed to 1 person, and then the person stood outside the door was the journalist writing for the Scotsman, and she tweeted it, and the next show then they were sold out. So it's things like that, just making sure that even if the numbers are low, to try and go ahead with it. Obviously encourage all your staff to tell their friends and customers just coming into the venue. Share ticket buyer reviews and testimonials on social. So if people had a really good time, maybe whipping out a phone and seeing if they would film a little reaction thing that you can use for a reel or something like that. Publicity stunts obviously work well. They generate word of mouth, but can be difficult to pull off well. Networking with other venues. So if people wanted to do sort of ticket discount swaps for other venues, say you have a pub across the road that's also taking part, we could help you set up a discount code for their staff on your shows and vice versa. So we could do things like that. My number 1 tip is always tell the box office staff about what's going on at your venue, what your venue's about, and like what the vibe is, because the box office staff are the people who will hear the question the most: what's on next, or what should I go and see today? So it's always great if the more they know about your venue, the better they're going to sell it. So it's always great to go down and talk to them. And then also connecting with local press and influencers to invite them to your events. So social media, this is obviously aimed at events who maybe don't already have their social media set up, but just making sure that you're using social media and sharing information about all of your events. You can use the hashtags Brighton Fringe and Find Your Fringe, and we'll do our best to share your content. Be organised and build a comms plan. So just making sure that you're keeping on top of it throughout the month. The best content is in real time and tells the story of your event or company, and thinking about what makes you stand out from the rest. So, whether it's sort of images or like a reel of a comedy show going on and people eating their burgers and having a great time, that would be a really great thing to share on social media, because it's like, you don't need to choose between comedy and dinner because you can have both here. Networking, I always think it's really great to network with lots of other people taking part in the Fringe. So you can organize exchanges, you know, free of charge. So, you know, if I shout out your event on social media, will you shout out ours, all that kind of stuff, it does help. You can always come down to our artist hub, so it's artists and venues hub really, but it's mostly artists in there. But to come down and chat to them when we set up, so we have an artist hub in the centre of town, at the Ledwood Centre on Jubilee Street, where there's a cafe and people can just pop in, tell us about your show, meet other people, tell us about your venue, and just, yeah, it's always good to network and attract people to your venue to come and check it out. And then, like I said earlier, talking about contacting local organisations who you share values with, and doing sort of swaps and things like that, and just networking that way. Ticketing is always a good thing, if you're doing in-house events, or you can encourage events that you're hosting to opt in for these kinds of tickets. So Friends of Fringe is a membership scheme that we run, so that's 2-for-1 tickets for our members. I always say it's great to, if you're not super keen on these 2-for-1 tickets, I always say it's still a great thing to put on the first night of each performance, or like say it's the first time your venue's taking part in Fringe, putting it on asking your shows to put it on the first week, just because it means that there's 2 bums on seats instead of 1, and that's double the amount of people that are going to go and talk about your venue and talk about the show that was happening at that venue. So I always think it's a really good thing that even if you don't want to do it for the whole time, you can put it on the early performances. We also do pay what you want. So a lot of venues will just tell people booking with them that this is the only structure that they offer. So pay what you want is, you can set the minimum, or the event manager can set the minimum of how much people can pay, and it will go all the way up to 30, and it will be on a sliding scale, and people can either pay the suggested amount or they can pay £30. That's a good way to make things more accessible for people. We can also set up promo codes and special tickets, which is what I was talking about earlier about setting up for sort of the pub around the corner staff. This is a great way to encourage people, or if you have your own membership scheme, that's a great way to encourage people. Or if you wanted to do something like in your monthly mailer that is exclusive to the people who signed up to that, we can get that all set up for people to use. And then finally, the other ones are group discounts or family tickets. So we also, if you're hosting children's events, I always advise for a family ticket, because it makes it more appealing. And then also large group discounts is a really, really, really appealing thing, because obviously come the weekend, especially in Brighton in May, can be quite, you know, stag or hen party heavy. So we have standard large group discounts that you can opt into, which is 5% for 4 people or more, and 10% for 10 people or more. So print wise, so I can send this presentation afterwards. We obviously have loads of connections with print companies and distributors, so we can advise on that. We also have some very strict flyering rules and regulations from the council, which is super annoying. I'm sure most venues in the city centre already know that you need a flyering licence to fly it in the city centre. Traditionally in the past, we have been allowed to bypass this during Fringe for Fringe venues and artists, as long as you had a Fringe logo on your flyer. They have reduced what we are allowed to do now. So we are allowed to flyer in Valley Gardens, New Road and Jubilee Street during May, as long as we are displaying a Brighton Fringe logo, but it's not as free and easy as it usually is. But that is also a bonus for a lot of venues in the city centre taking part in Fringe, who might have been told that they need to buy a flyering licence, full stop. So if you have your Fringe logo on your flyer, you are okay in certain areas. It's good to have a look at the flyering regulations on our website, because they are slightly convoluted. There is a map on there so people can understand where they're allowed to flyer. I'm just really hoping loads of people don't get fines this year, because that would be really annoying. And then finally, making sure you've got all the listings live online. So the Facebook events again, but also uploading your events to things like Visit Brighton, What's On, All Events, XYZ Brighton, and the Argus. I'm pretty sure last time I checked all of those places, it was free to list your events. Especially Visit Brighton is really great, because that's what tourists will check before when they are coming here. So it's really great. And then obviously if you're hosting family shows, there's obviously lots of family sort of magazines and organizations you can list with in the local area as well. Elevator pitch, this is really important, not just for events but also for venues. So there will be opportunities for people to get involved in other venues shows. So there's quite a lot of things called Pick of the Fringe at different venues, where people will perform like 5-10 minute snippets of their show, and then they can shout out, you know, which venue they're at and where to buy tickets at the end. And then the same with mixed bill lineups. I think these are also a really great way to get involved with Brighton Fringe as a venue, to host mixed bill lineups and Pick of the Fringe events, because they're generally pretty cheap and cheerful. People just like to come, share a bit of their work, have a bit of a practice before their big show at the weekend. So those are really great things. And also it's a great idea to have a bit of an elevator pitch prepared for either your venue and what kind of things you're hosting. So just a sort of 30-second summary of what kind of events you're hosting, why people should come to your venue, but then also any of the events you're hosting sort of in-house. It's really good to know exactly what they are, so that you can, it just reels off the tongue really quickly, because quite a lot of the time you'll say, what's your show about, or what's your venue like, and people go and it's like, we need to move quicker than that. Like, you know, there's like, last year we had 120 venues and 880 events, so it's like you've got to make sure that you're ready to stand out from the crowd as well. And then we just got some working with the press tips. So we always provide for venues and artists a press list. So this has local press on, national press on. Some people are up for doing sort of previews of events. Some people might be up for doing sort of a profile on a venue and what listings you have on. And other people will just be wanting to just review. They won't want to come and do any sort of preview sort of marketing work for you. They just want to come and review events. So this is the sort of do's and don'ts of trying to attract people to your venue and your shows. So making sure you're sending out a press release that grabs the reader's attention, and making sure that you proofread your work, unlike this presentation, because I have spotted at least 3 spelling mistakes while I've been reading this out. And then also keep your press releases to the point, like short, sharp, and what it like. So they only need to know who you are, what your show is about, what the venue is about, you know, what the vibe of the venue is, what makes it special, and what, you know, if you wanted to do something for your venue, I would say you want an introduction of what the venue is about, why you're taking part in Brighton Fringe, the sort of a brief overview of maybe the top 2 or 3 events that you're going to be hosting, and then a quick summary with contact details and links to high resolution images of the venue and of the people performing at your venue. And then using celebrity names or endorsements. These only work, they're great to grab people's attention, but they only work if it's actually true. We've had people in the past use names and things that they probably weren't supposed to, so which ends up backfiring. And then aiming for journalists to receive press releases sort of 2 or 3 weeks out from the festival. It's a good idea. Don'ts when dealing with the press: don't attach large image files, because these are going to clog up their inbox and they're going to get annoyed. And then don't go too heavy on the sort of over the top adjectives unless they're from sort of real reviews or real feedback for your venue, just because this tends to put people off, put journalists off. It seems sort of overzealous perhaps. And then don't panic about getting write-ups and things like that. You know, then your venue and your events can be successful even without the media. A lot of people get very, very, very obsessed with media and previews and reviews and sort of profiles prior to the Fringe, and it's not the end of the world. And also, don't harass people on Twitter, because we have had people do that before as well. It's not a great idea. Just like, you haven't replied to my email. Just no, not.
Oh my god.
I'm
not going to.
Yeah, I know. I always say, you know, you don't need to. It's better to send out a smaller amount of press releases to a smaller group of journalists who might genuinely be interested in what you are doing during Fringe and what your venue has to offer, rather than explaining it to sending it to everyone, and explaining to them why you think they'd enjoy it. Include like links your show has to current topics, so like current affairs, current things that people are discussing quite a lot, sort of in the psyche, and then include your social media handles, and make sure you're including things like your address and where to buy tickets and things like that. It seems obvious, but we all forget these things sometimes. And then this is the targeting, so making sure that you're contacting people who are going to be interested in what you have to offer. If you're doing a load of comedy nights, you probably aren't going to necessarily be needing to contact the sort of theatre reviewers that will be coming down. You're more likely to want to be contacting people like BN1 magazine and letting them know that this is what you've got going on during Fringe, and would they like to come down one night and have, you know, some food on the house and watch the show, basically. I always say this is really important to people. I think for, you know, some venues that haven't got a sort of a year-round budget for this kind of thing, it's really, really important to set a budget and decide what it's going to be, allocate it and stick to it. Don't start overspending because you're panicking. You've just got to make sure that you're sticking to what you are able to do and what you are able to deliver. I think we've highlighted quite a few sort of cheap and cheerful ways to get the word out about your event. So hopefully you don't feel the need to spend lots of money on it. We obviously provide the venue board and the bunting for free. So I think, you know, it's great to get involved in maybe a bit of sponsored ads, maybe some print, just some posters and some flyers and things like that. And then the rest of it, you might not need to spend huge amounts of money on. Making sure you allocate a timetable. Some of the feedback that we've had from venues taking part in Brighton Fringe is, you know, for year one, they go way too hard and then they get overwhelmed and they've booked, you know, 30 shows and it's complete chaos and they don't sleep for a month. So it's always best to start off small, you know, and start to build your reputation year on year. You know, Brighton Fringe will be back next year and the year after and the year after. So we can just, you know, it's good to build up that reputation for hosting a certain type of event. But also making sure that you're not taking on everything and making sure that, you know, there is a timetable and it's allocated to other members of staff, certain things, and making sure like everybody knows who's doing what. And then just evaluating it. So we can obviously help you with ticket buying data. So, you know, where those people, obviously it will be anonymized, but we can share things like where people have been buying tickets, like their postcodes, whether they've been coming from inside Brighton, outside Brighton, whether they've been coming from Hanover, whether they've been coming from Hove, things like that. And we can look at stuff like what, you know, what times were people buying tickets and things like that for you. So if you want any of that information, we can give it to you because it will help you plan next year. So it's all really important stuff like that. And, you know, making sure you're making improvements on each year. And then just wanted to say about Brighton Fringe advertising. So we administer A4 posters, A3 posters. What else do we administer? Big A0 sort of Corex boards up on Queen's Road, and we've got some in the lanes. We've got lamppost boards all around the city. And you can buy these through us on Eventitron. So you provide the sort of digital design, we get it printed and distributed and displayed, and most of them will be up for about 8 weeks. So from the beginning of April to the end of May, obviously the first weekend of June. So that's something that we offer. Also, the price is very broad. So we have stuff from £15 to £240 for the 8 weeks. So yeah, there's a bit of something for everybody's budget there, which is great. Also, our printing partner Gemini Print offers a 10% discount on all print to Brighton Fringe venues and artists. So if you don't have a regular printer, it's always worth checking with them and seeing what they can do for us. They can also help with things like I mentioned, sort of maybe something outside of your venue if you wanted something sort of slightly larger printed, or something to make your venue stand out a bit more. They can help with all that kind of stuff. Basically, whatever you want, they can print it. And then our website. So we have lots and lots and lots of information on our website, on the venue managers section for venue managers. So you can just browse through that. We have the regular venue managers meeting, and also me, Sarah and Maddie me and Maddie are here 5 days a week, Monday to Friday 9 till 5, so you can always ask us anything that you want. And Sarah's here 3 days a week, and so yeah, we're very available for answering questions and giving advice. But yeah, that's the end of that. Thank you for listening to me.
Of
Feel like I
course.
just talked at you like incessantly for quite a while. I'll stop that recording.